The silence shattered like glass under a boot heel. In the dim glow of the nursing home's fluorescent lights, old man Harlan's lips parted for the first time in 12 long years, his voice a raspy whisper that cut through the monotonous hum of beeping monitors and distant coughs. "Nurse," he croaked, eyes suddenly alive with a fire no one had seen since the war ended. "Bring me my uniform." Emily, the young nurse on duty, froze mid-step, her clipboard slipping from her fingers and clattering to the floor. She had cared for Harlan Whitaker for 5 of those silent years, changing his sheets, feeding him pureed meals, and wondering what ghosts haunted the depths of his unblinking stare. No one knew why he stopped speaking after his discharge from the VA hospital. Some whispered it was the shrapnel in his leg, others the invisible wounds in his soul from Vietnam. But now, at 82, with death's shadow creeping closer, he had chosen this moment to break free. The home buzzed with the news by morning. Whispers rippled through the corridors like wind through rice paddies. Harlan's old metaphor from the letters he'd once written home. Residents in wheelchairs gathered in the common room, their frail hands clutching coffee mugs, eyes wide with a mix of curiosity and fear. "What's gotten into old Harlan?" muttered Mrs. Jenkins, her knitting needles pausing mid-stitch. "Man hasn't said boo since Nixon was in office." Emily approached his room cautiously, the uniform in question tucked under her arm. She'd found it in the storage closet, moth-eaten and faded, but still bearing the insignia of a sergeant in the 101st Airborne. The fabric smelled of dust and forgotten valor, metals pinned crookedly from years of neglect. Harlan sat up in bed, his bony frame straighter than it had been in decades, waiting. As she laid it out before him, Harlan's gnarled fingers traced the olive-drab cloth, tears welling in his eyes. "I need to wear it one last time," he murmured, his voice gaining strength with each word, like a dam cracking under pressure. Emily helped him dress, button by button, the ritual unfolding in heavy silence broken only by his shallow breaths. The uniform hung loose on his shrunken body, a ghost of the robust soldier he'd been, but in that moment, he transformed, shoulders squaring, chin lifting, as if the fabric itself infused him with life. Word spread beyond the home. Harlan's daughter, Sarah, rushed in from the city, her high heels clicking frantically on the linoleum. She hadn't heard her father's voice since she was a teenager, back when he'd come home from the war a changed man, slamming doors and staring at walls. "Dad?" she whispered, bursting into the room, her makeup streaked from the drive. Harlan looked up, and for the first time in years, he smelled a small, cracked thing, but genuine. They talked that afternoon, halting at first, like rediscovering a language half forgotten. Harlan spoke of the jungle, the heat that clung like a second skin, the friends lost in ambushes that replayed in his nightmares. "I saw things no man should," he said, his voice trembling. "But I carried on. For you, for your mother." Sarah held his hand, her own tears flowing freely, the years of distance melting away in the warmth of revelation. As evening fell, more visitors arrived, old comrades from the local VFW hall, summoned by the grapevine. One by one, they filed in, saluting stiffly, their own uniforms dusted off for the occasion. Stories flowed like whiskey at a wake. The time Harlan saved a platoon with a daring flank maneuver. The letters he wrote home, filled with lies of safety to spare his family worry. Emily watched from the doorway, her heart swelling with the humanity of it all, these broken men, piecing together their shattered pasts. But Harlan wasn't done. As the moon rose high, he asked for paper and pen, his hand shaking as he scrawled a letter. "To my grandson," he explained to Sarah, "the boy I never met, because I was too ashamed to speak." The words poured out, confessions of regret, lessons hard-won from the battlefield. That courage isn't the absence of fear, but the will to face it. That silence can be a prison, but words a key. The night deepened, and Harlan grew weary, but his eyes burned brighter. He spoke of his wife, gone 10 years now, how her love had been his anchor through the storms of memory. "She'd want me to go out like this," he said, tugging at the uniform's collar. "Dressed for duty." Sarah nodded, choking back sobs, realizing this wasn't just a request, it was a farewell. In the quiet hours before dawn, Harlan closed his eyes, the uniform crisp against his chest. But his story was far from over. The echoes of his voice lingered, inspiring those left behind to confront their own silences. Emily, wiping her eyes, promised herself she'd listen more closely to the quiet ones, for every soul carried untold battles. Yet, as the sun crept up, a knock came at the door. An unexpected visitor, a young man with Harlan's eyes, clutching a backpack. "I'm his grandson," he said, voice uncertain. "I got a call." The young man's arrival sent a ripple through the room, like a grenade tossed into still waters. Jake Whitaker stood there, 25 and fresh from college, his backpack slung over one shoulder, eyes wide with the shock of family secrets unveiled. He had grown up hearing whispers about his grandfather, the war hero, who turned ghost, but never a word from the man himself. Sarah rose, embracing her son tightly. "Jake, how did you?" she began, but he cut her off gently. "Aunt Emily called, the nurse. Said Grandpa was talking, asking for his uniform. I drove all night." Harlan's eyes fluttered open at the sound, focusing on the boy with a mixture of wonder and pain. "You look like your father," he whispered, voice cracking. Jake's dad had died young, a car accident that left scars deeper than any battlefield wound. Jake approached the bed hesitantly, pulling up a chair. "Grandpa, I don't know what to say. Mom told me stories, but you were always just a picture on the wall." Harlan reached out, his hand steady despite the frailty, gripping Jake's arm. "Stories are all I have left, son. Sit. Let me tell you mine." And so, the tale unfolded, weaving back through time to the sweltering jungles of Vietnam, 1968. Harlan painted vivid pictures with his words. The chopper rides into hell, rotors thumping like a heartbeat. The mud that sucked at boots, hiding landmines and despair. The camaraderie of brothers in arms, sharing cigarettes under starless skies. "We were kids," he said, "thrown into a war we didn't understand, fighting for ideals that felt as distant as home." He spoke of his first kill, a shadowy figure in the underbrush, the recoil of his M16 jolting him awake to the horror. "I saw his face later, younger than you, Jake. Eyes still open, accusing." The room fell silent, the weight of that memory pressing down. Sarah dabbed her eyes, remembering how that war had stolen her father's laughter, replacing it with night terrors that shook the house. But Harlan pressed on, his voice gaining momentum, as if unloading a rucksack carried too long. He described the day his platoon was ambushed near the Mekong Delta, bullets whizzing like angry hornets. "Lost half my squad that day. Jimmy, my best friend from boot camp, took one in the chest, saving me. He died in my arms, whispering about his girl back in Ohio." Jake leaned forward, enthralled and horrified, the human cost of history laid bare. Emily popped in with fresh water, her presence a quiet anchor. She had her own reasons for caring so deeply. Her father had served too, coming home hollow, eventually lost to the bottle. Watching Harlan heal through words, she felt a spark of hope for the broken veterans she tended daily. As midday sun filtered through the blinds, Harlan shifted to lighter memories, the ones that kept him sane. "Your grandmother, she sent care packages, socks, candy, letters smelling of her perfume. Those kept me going." He chuckled softly, a sound rusty from disuse. "Once, she baked cookies that arrived crumbled to dust, but I ate every crumb, pretending it was home." Jake shared his own life, tentative at first, college struggles, dreams of becoming a teacher, the void of never knowing his grandfather. "I read about the war in books," he said, "but it's different hearing it from you." Harlan nodded, eyes misting. "Books don't bleed, son. Remember that." The conversation turned poignant when Harlan confessed his silence. "After I came home, the world moved on, but I couldn't. Protests, people spitting on asphalt like we'd fought for nothing. So I shut down, locked it all away." Sarah squeezed his hand. "We tried, Dad. Therapy, meds. You just vanished inside." Twilight brought a twist none expected. Another visitor arrived, unannounced. Colonel Reeves, Harlan's old commanding officer, now 90 and leaning on a cane. Heard through the vet's network. The colonel grumbled, saluting sharply. "Couldn't let you face this alone, Sergeant." Reeves brought a faded photo from his wall at Harlan's platoon, grinning in a rare moment of peace. "You were the bravest of us," he said, voice thick. "But we all carried ghosts." The colonel's presence shifted the room's dynamic, adding layers of shared history. He regaled them with tales Harlan had forgotten. A midnight raid where Harlan's quick thinking turned the tide, earning him a Bronze Star. You never bragged, Reeves said. Always the quiet hero. Jake watched, absorbing the valor, while Sarah saw her father and knew not broken, but resilient. As night fell, Harlan grew tired, but his spirit soared. Wearing this uniform reminds me who I was, he murmured. And who I can still be. Jake promised to visit more, to bridge the generations. Emily, overhearing, smiled. Human connections, fragile yet powerful, were the true metals of life. But deeper revelations awaited, as Harlan hinted at a long-buried secret from the war, one that could change everything. The secret emerged like a buried mine, unexpected and explosive. Harlan paused mid-sentence, his eyes distant, then fixed on Colonel Reeves. Sir, there's something I never told you about that last mission in '69. The room tensed, the air thick with anticipation. Reeves leaned forward, cane creaking. The hill assault? What about it, Sergeant? Harlan drew a shaky breath, the uniform's fabric rustling like leaves in a storm. We were pinned down, artillery raining hell. I saw a kid Viet Cong, no more than 15 surrendering, hands up, but orders were no prisoners. His voice broke. I let him go, hid him in the brush, gave him water. If they'd found out. Reeves' face hardened, then softened. You disobeyed a direct order? Harlan nodded, braced for judgment. Instead, the colonel clasped his shoulder. That took guts, son. More than pulling a trigger. War's not black and white, it's shades of gray, and you chose mercy. Jake's eyes widened, the twist reframing his grandfather from stoic soldier to compassionate rebel. You risked everything for a stranger? Harlan met his gaze. He was no stranger, just a boy, like our boys. Haunted me for years, wondering if I did right. Sarah, stunned, realized this act of humanity had fueled his silence, a burden of moral ambiguity in a world demanding absolutes. The revelation sparked deeper conversations. Reeves shared his own regrets, decisions that cost lives, medals that felt like chains. We came home heroes on paper, but villains in our mirrors. Emily, listening from the hall, felt a surge of empathy. These men, pillars of strength, cracked by the weight of conscience. As the evening wore on, more layers peeled back. Harlan spoke of post-war life, the factory job that numbed his days, the nightmares that stole his nights. Your mother tried to reach me, he told Jake, glancing at Sarah. But I pushed her away, afraid my darkness would swallow her. Sarah nodded, tears flowing. I forgave you long ago, Dad. Just glad you're here now. Jake, inspired, pulled out his phone, showing photos of his life, graduation, friends, a girlfriend who dreamed of peace activism. I've protested wars, he admitted sheepishly. Harlan smiled. Good. Learn from our mistakes. Fight with words, not guns. The generational bridge strengthened, values of empathy and courage passing like a torch. A nurse's aide brought dinner, but Harlan waved it away, appetite gone. Instead, he asked for music, an old record player in the common room. They wheeled him there, uniform gleaming under lights, residents gathering like moths to flame. An ancient vinyl spun, the Green Berets ballad, evoking tears and salutes. Harlan hummed along, voice faint but true. Mid-song, another surprise, a letter arrived, forwarded from the VA. Emily read it aloud, a thank you from a Vietnamese immigrant, claiming his father was the boy Harlan spared. Your act saved my family line, it said. I honor you. The room erupted in gasps, the twist amplifying the human ripple of one kind deed. Harlan wept openly, the weight lifting. See, Jake? Choices echo. Reeves nodded. You're a better man than most, Sergeant. The night deepened with stories, laughter mixing with sorrow, bonds forging in vulnerability. By midnight, exhaustion claimed Harlan, but peace etched his face. Tomorrow, more tales, he promised. Jake stayed, sleeping in a chair, while Sarah and Reeves departed with hugs. Emily tucked him in, whispering, You've given them hope. Yet, as dawn approached, Harlan's breaths grew labored, hinting at the final battle ahead. His family, now united, prepared for what came next, cherishing the man behind the uniform. Dawn broke with a golden hush, but Harlan's room felt heavier, his breath's shallow rhythms against the beeps. Jake stirred awake, rubbing sleep from his eyes, while Sarah returned with coffee, her face etched with worry. How is he? She asked Emily, who shook her head gently. Holding on, but fading. The doctor's coming. Harlan opened his eyes, the uniform still on, a symbol of defiance against time. Not yet, he rasped, summoning strength. More to say. They gathered close, the air charged with finality's grace. He turned to Jake. Son, promise me, live fully. Don't let fears silence you like they did me. Jake nodded, throat tight. I promise, Grandpa. And I'll tell your story the real one, with the mercy and the pain. Harlan's hand squeezed his. That's my legacy. Not medals, but hearts changed. Reeves arrived soon after, bearing a flag, stars and stripes folded neatly. For when the time comes, he said solemnly. Together, they reminisced. Boot camp pranks, letters from home, the unbreakable bond of shared foxholes. Laughter echoed, a balm against grief. As morning progressed, Harlan's voice weakened, but his spirit shone. He confessed smaller regrets, missed birthdays, unspoken I love yous. Sarah forgave anew. You were fighting invisible enemies, Dad. We understand now. A chaplain visited, offering prayers, but Harlan waved him off kindly. God's in the details, the boy I saved, the family here. That's my faith. The room swelled with quiet reverence, humanity's light piercing war's shadows. By noon, his condition worsened, monitors alarming softly. Emily adjusted IVs, her eyes misty. You've touched us all, she whispered. Harlan smiled faintly. Thank you for bringing the uniform. It let me be me again. Family and friends held vigil, sharing meals and memories. Jake read from the Vietnamese letter, voices blending in tribute. Reeves saluted one last time. Dismissed with honor, Sergeant. As afternoon waned, Harlan grew still, eyes closing peacefully. I'm ready, he murmured, wearing my uniform, like a soldier should. His final breath came gentle, a release after years of captivity. Grief washed over them, but mingled with gratitude. Sarah clutched the flag, Jake the photo, Reeves the stories. Emily noted in his chart. Passed with dignity, voice found. The funeral days later drew crowds, vets, nurses, even the immigrant's family, flown in to pay respects. Jake spoke at the graveside. Grandpa taught us that silence can break, mercy endures, and love redeems. His uniform was his armor, but his heart his true weapon. In the years that followed, Jake became a history teacher, weaving Harlan's tale into lessons, inspiring students to value empathy over enmity. Sarah volunteered at the VA, bridging gaps for silent veterans. Emily continued her work, listening deeper, healing through presence. Harlan's request echoed as a beacon. In asking for his uniform, he reclaimed his voice, mending fractured lives. The human spirit, resilient and profound, proved that even in twilight, one can shine brightly, leaving a legacy of compassion that outlasts any war.